Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ormond Beach, a welcoming community of compassion and acceptance. I am the Reverend Kathy Tu Ricky, and I invite you to our virtual worship service this morning. Our discussion group and in-person worship is suspended until further notice. We will continue to hold virtual services every Sunday until it is safe to hold a large group function again in our building. Now on to announcements for the good of our community. As a precaution, I am suspending the Monday face-to-face brown bag lunch until further notice. I have plans to reach out to you by phone and electronically. In the meantime, if you need to contact me, please don't hesitate to call me. My information is in the directory and on the website. There will not be a potluck supper this Friday, of course, and they are on hold until further notice. And also, please remember that Lifelong Learning has canceled all of their sessions until further notice. Our office can be contacted by phone or email. They're listed in our e-news in the Jotter and on the website. Kathy Jackson will be working mostly from home and will respond to phone messages and emails. I'm delighted to tell you that Megan Downey is here this morning. You may have heard her playing as you came and joined the live stream service. This morning, her prelude will be Field of Daisies by Brian Crane. And so, with the sound of the bell, our singing bowl, our service begins. Thank you so much for being here this morning, Megan. It is a delight to have you. And I hope we didn't make you dizzy, but we wanted you to see Megan this morning playing for us. Our call to worship this morning is by Lindsay Bates. Come, let us worship together. Let us open our minds to the challenge of reason, open our hearts to the healing of love, open our lives to the calling of conscience, open our souls to the comfort of joy. Astonished by the miracle of life, grateful for our fellowship, confident in the power of our living faith, we are gathered here. Come, let us worship together. If you have one at home, I invite you now to light a chalice with me. I light this chalice, a single flame which I hope kindles many hearts this morning. Let this flame unite us in virtual community and remind us each of each other's presence as we worship from many singular rooms. Let this flame inspire in us hope and courage to face these unprecedented times. Let this flame be our guide in making sense of a chaotic world, and let its light show us the way to beloved community, both near and far. And our congregational covenant, repeat after me. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our aim. To dwell together in peace and freedom, to seek the truth, and to help one another, these are our goals. Now I will share the joys and concerns submitted to me this week. From Betty Green, our congregational president, what a joy it is to experience everyone pitching in, she says, and to help out where help is needed. Our care committee is doing a fantastic job of checking up on all members and has been coordinated by Joyce Nilsson. Also, thanks to Tracy and Jan Taylor for delivering groceries to members who are not able to shop. Thank you all, says Betty. And Patty Alsobrook has a joy. She says, on Thursday of last week, I got laid off by the Wyndham Hotel. Yes, it is a joy, she says, because she received a generous severance package, and now she can devote all her time to the travel business, which she loves. It's all going to work out fine, she says. Patty is thankful for her good fortune in the face of hard times. A concern from Joyce Nelson. She says, my daughter Cynthia, who is a nurse practitioner at the University of Pennsylvania, is seeing all patients due to life-threatening diseases, working full-time, and she seems to be doing what is needed. And finally, another concern, Phil Elliott, pillar of our community, is seriously ill after a fall on March 19th. He went to the Advent emergency room on March 21st and was admitted with extreme fatigue and pneumonia. I talked to Phil yesterday and he's doing better, but reports that he still has heart and kidney problems. His recovery will be protracted. Please, no phone calls or texts for now. Updates will follow. And now I invite you into the spirit of prayer and meditation with me. Spirit of life and love, bless us this day with the understanding that joy and woe are woven fine, that whomsoever brings us tears also brings us great joy, that the hours before dawn are often the darkest. Spirit of life and love, bestow upon us the peace which passes our understanding, so that hope, faith, and love may fill our hearts and still our worrying minds. Spirit of life and love, in this difficult time, bid us to strive for our best selves each day. Let our striving be for justice, equity, and compassion in our human relations. Inspire us to create beloved community in ever-widening spheres. Spirit of life and love, we give thanks for this precious day and for all that is our life, for we know that our life is a gift, freely given, unbidden, and unearned. We give joyous praise for this, our one precious life. Amen. And this morning, with a musical accompaniment, we are going to sing Spirit of Life, hymn number 123. Some of you have sung this enough times to know the verses by heart. Next week, I will send you the verses and we can all sing along. This morning, I have a reading for you from Tara Brach. She is an American psychologist, author, and proponent of Buddhist meditation. In 2017, she contributed an article to Yoga Journal about facing our fears. She tells the story of a client, Maria, who came to her as a very anxious person. Here is the story of Maria befriending her worst fear, that of being abandoned by her partner. Maria and her partner Jeff had been arguing about an upcoming visit from his parents. Tired from a difficult day at work, he suggested that they figure things out the next evening. Without their usual goodnight kiss, he rolled over and fell asleep. Filled with agitation, Maria got up and went to her office and sat down on her meditation cushion. As she had practiced many times before, Maria became still, pausing to check in and find out what was going on inside her. There was a familiar swirl of thoughts. Jeff's ashamed of me. He doesn't really want to be with me. Then she had an image of her father, drunk and angry, walking out the front door, and she heard a familiar inner voice saying, "No matter how hard I try, he's going to leave me." She felt an icy claw gripping her heart. Her whole body was shaking. Taking a few deep breaths, Maria began whispering a prayer. "Please, may I feel held in love." She called to mind her spirit allies, her grandmother, a close friend, and her counselor, and visualized them circling around her, a presence that could keep her company as she experienced the quaking in her heart. Placing her hand gently on her heart, she sensed compassion pouring through her hand directly into the core of her vulnerability. She decided to let go of any resistance to the fear and to let it be as big as it was. Breathing with it, she felt something shift. She felt the fear storming through her, but it felt like a violent current moving through a sea of love. She heard a gentle whisper arise from her heart. "When I trust I'm the ocean, I'm not afraid of the waves." The next evening, when Maria and Jeff met to talk, she felt at peace. And for the first time ever, she realized that she could let in the truth that Jeff loved her. Tara Brock, commenting on Maria's experience, says, "This homecoming to the fullness of our being is the gift of fear, and it frees us to be genuinely intimate with our world." Further, Brock advises us, as long as you are alive, you'll feel fear. It's an intrinsic part of your world, as natural as a bitter cold winter day or winds that rip branches off of trees. If you resist it or push it aside, you miss a powerful opportunity for healing and freedom. When you face your fears with mindfulness and compassion, you begin to realize the loving and luminous awareness that, like the ocean, can hold the moving waves. This boundless presence is your true refuge. You are coming home to the vastness of your own awakened heart. So ends the reading. Mark Twain said, "I've been through some terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened." Between our reptilian brains and our vivid imaginations, we humans are the masters of what my Aunt Betty used to call borrowing trouble. Our fears get triggered, and many of us run headlong into forecasting fatal conclusions of all sorts. The what ifs start kicking in, and the next thing you know, we're on Amazon ordering generators and sea rations and gas masks. I recently had a brush with the what ifs. It was the early part of last week when I realized my daughters, Allison and Emily, were not going to make their planned trip down from New York State to visit me next month. As I sat in sadness at not getting to spend time with them, it hit me how many miles were between us right now, and how we're actually prohibited from seeing each other. And even though it's for good reason, I experienced a deep maternal pang of longing in that moment. And the what ifs started to creep in. What if COVID-19 infections persist and our sheltering in place lasts for months on end? What if COVID-19 disrupts supply chains and causes government infrastructure to break down and there's mayhem in the streets? What if Allison and Emily get seriously ill and there's no way for me to travel to be with them? What if I get sick? What if I die and I never see my precious girls again? With that last thought, my anxiousness bloomed until it would threaten to overtake me. But fortunately, I had enough of my wits about me to step back from these cascading thoughts. With a few deep breaths, I realized I can't possibly know what the future holds, even of tomorrow. I do know, however, that if I continue to engage in this kind of rumination, I'm going to have an anxiety attack because, once again, the reptilian brain, the home of fight or flight, cannot tell the difference between real and imagined danger. My imagination has the power to ignite my sympathetic nervous system as effectively as a tiger walking into the room. In the grip of this pandemic, fear can become a mindset for us. In the last 2 weeks, we've been bombarded with bad news about COVID-19, its potential spread, the lack of testing kits, the lack of resources to treat the infected, the seeming disconnect between the White House and epidemiologists, the lack of action on Capitol Hill to provide financial aid to those hardest hit by this pandemic. We also receive news of lack of responsibility on the parts of citizens who ignore social distancing and sheltering in place, who hoard supplies, who travel in airplanes knowing they are infected. Some of this news makes us angry, but underlying almost every response of anger is fear. Fear for our safety, fear for the safety of our loved ones and for others. We cannot let this fear overtake us. Occasionally, we must pull back from our fear-inducing news and bring ourselves into the present moment. It is prescriptive to ground ourselves in our immediate surroundings and devote some of our time each day to seeking beauty and grace in our home spaces. We need to remind ourselves each day that there remains much in our lives for which to be grateful. A fearful mindset, when it takes over, causes suffering. And that is a Buddhist concept. Fear causes suffering. And here's an instructive example. This story reminds me of all the times that I've ever wanted to throttle my kids for doing something incredibly dumb and risky. Tara Brock shared a story of one of her associates who let his teenage son take the family car out for an evening for the first time. The father gave the son a midnight curfew, and when the son failed to return home, the father became anxious. His anxiousness grew as he imagined all the terrible things that could befall his son as an inexperienced driver. As the father's fear escalated, so did his anger with his son. Fortunately, the father was able to disengage from his spiraling thoughts by bringing himself into the present and asking, "What's going on here? What's going on inside of me?" He recognized the anger, of course, but underneath that was also a heart-rending fear and then grief at the thought of his son dying in a car accident. With that, the anger melted away as the father leaned into his grief and felt and acknowledged what he felt with compassion. The fear remained, But having been named and acknowledged, it did not escalate. When the son finally came home saying he lost track of time, the father responded not with anger, but with an honest and heartfelt explanation that the thought of losing his son was unbearable. So please, son, don't ever be late again. Two aspects of the father's experience are important for us here. First, in facing our fears, taking that step back and asking ourselves, what's going on? Why am I reacting this way? And after discerning the cause of the fear, it's vitally important to acknowledge the cause with compassion towards ourselves. Don't be dismissive or judgmental of yourself in that. In doing this, we open ourselves to a vulnerability which softens rather than hardens our hearts and connects us with a well of love that exists within all of us. In this way, our fear may remain, but we are much less likely to react in anger to those things that we cannot control, and much more likely to respond calmly and compassionately to others when we are in stressful situations. Recently, Jack Kornfield, a Buddhist practitioner who introduced mindfulness practice to the West, wrote a piece called The Bodhisattva Response. This means more or less, what would the Buddha do in response to COVID-19? Kornfield asked us to choose generosity, clarity, steadiness, and love over greed, hate, fear, and ignorance in time of any calamity. Bodhisattvas always respond to tragedy with love and compassion. The bodhisattva deliberately turns toward suffering to serve and to help. But how do we model the bodhisattva response? Well, first, we must make friends with our fear. And Kornfield, in a similar way in which Tara Brach instructs, invites us all to be still for a time, breathe deeply, and acknowledge our fear, apprehension, uncertainty, and helplessness, and hold those feelings with a compassionate heart. He suggests that we hold the fearful part of ourselves as we would a friend or a loved one, saying, I understand, speaking loving and soothing words. This fearful part of ourselves wants to protect us. Acknowledge that fact. Don't tell fear everything is going to be all right, but that in this moment, things seem to be okay. And when we have treated ourselves with compassion and realize that even in our isolation, we realize how much humans need each other, we can ask ourselves, what is my best intention and my noblest aspiration in this difficult time? Kornfield assures us that our hearts will know the answer. We, as Unitarian Universalists, are called to promote and affirm beloved community. This means that we affirm the worth and dignity of every person. We seek justice, equity, and compassion in our human relationships. We seek the same for the world over, and we affirm our interconnectedness. All of these spiritual values are reflected in Buddhism, in the Buddhism that's taught by both Brach and Kornfield. And so, I wish for all of you a practice of befriending your fears. I wish for all of you the peace which comes from facing our fears and to know in our hearts how we will respond to a world in need of our love and compassion. May it be so. Normally at this time in our service, we make an offering to the congregation. If you're so moved, you can do so in absentia. Currently, we have no way to receive the offering electronically. However, if you would like to mail a check to UUCOB, your gesture would be deeply appreciated by our beloved community. Please do not send cash through the U.S. Postal Service. So I invite you now to sing at home this song twice through. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. It seems all too soon to be extinguishing the flame. But if you have your chalice lit, let us now extinguish it together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And these parting words adapted from Heather Ryan Starr. As we go forth into this day, may our sheltering in place keep us safe and give us the pause we need to appreciate our connections to one another, our sense of hope, beauty, and wonder in this world, our deep knowing that we have to take care of ourselves and each other with love and joy if we are to survive, soulfully survive, this world's mayhem. Go in peace, friends. And now closing out our service is Twilight on the Lake by Matthew Edwards, played by Megan Down. Thank you so much, Megan, for being here. And namaste to you all. I will leave the live stream rolling for another 10 minutes so that you can continue to comment and chat with each other. And I will be delighted to read them later on after I end the stream. Remember that this will be archived at the same link, so you can watch it anytime. And I was going to tell you one more thing. Oh, how much I miss you being here. Be well and stay well.